Welcome to another episode of Home Again TV. This episode, we will focus on the African American hospitals and how they influence the communities of the east side of Columbus. Hello everyone. I'm going to allow for you guys to tag and share. There's a little button in the left hand corner at the bottom that says SHARE. You can go ahead and hit that, and what happens is it explodes to all of your friends. Isn't that cool? Give you guys a couple more minutes. Thanks for joining me. Hey, Nigeria. Nigeria. Hey, Nigeria. Hey, Ian. Thank you for joining me today. Hey, Keisha. Keisha, I need to call you about a new mug. Inbox me so that I can remember to do it. Hey, Tara. Thanks for joining me. Can you please share? I'd really appreciate it. Thank you. I'd appreciate it. Hey, cousin Carlisa. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Today, we're going to talk about an interesting topic, and I'm so excited about it. You know, we're on a series of community improvement primarily in the African American community. And today, we're talking about hospitals. Hospitals for the African American community is huge because it required the African American community to create healthcare systems for the African Americans. We'll talk a lot about that today. I've got some heavy hitters in the house that are going to join in the conversation. If you don't know, Chandrita House Boykins, who will talk about finance. We have Beverly Robinson in the house, who's going to talk a little bit about her story, DNA, and how healthcare can help improve, or I should say DNA can help improve healthcare. And then we have somebody new I'd like to introduce everybody to. And guess what? Y'all know when somebody's new, I forget their name. So I'm going to try my very best. I've been practicing it. Jocelyn Davidson. Did I get it? Did I get it? Woo! I need some thumbs up because y'all already know. Y'all already know. I said it, Jocelyn. Yes, I said it. I said it. I'm so proud of myself. Jocelyn. Okay. So today I'd like to address a couple of questions. One of it being, does it concern you to grow older? Do you know if you're financially prepared to grow older? Where did African Americans lose focus of the healthcare system, and how can we improve moving forward? And then last but not least, what resources do we have available that will help improve this conversation? I'm going to have you guys watch a clip. It's really important that you understand why it is we're having this conversation, and history is the perfect recipe to explain it. We'll talk soon after the clip. It was a normal conversation in life that African Americans built their own hospitals. Black-owned or operated hospitals were prominent in the South and in northern cities from the time of slavery until Civil War eras of the early 1960s. According to Bill Southmore of Hospitals and Health Network, he says hospitals were created to promote healthcare and education within a segregated society. They evolved to become symbols of Black pride and achievement. These professional healthcare communities provided training opportunities and contributed to the development of a Black professional class. In the pre-Civil War South, a few large plantations assembled clinics for slaves in 1832 in Savannah, Georgia. The first white-run hospital for blacks was called the Georgia Infirmary, and it was established for relief and protection of aged and afflicted Africans. After the war, whites built segregated hospitals for blacks. But that was up until 1891, where Dr. Daniel Hale Williams, a black surgeon, established Providence Hospital and training schools. William established blacks and whites to practice together. In 1895, he established the National Medical Association for Black Professionals, and soon after, in 1908, he established the Black Nurses Association for Black professionals. Dr. W.T. Method started his practice in 1906 at his first office on Parsons Avenue. His second office was actually across the street where Second Baptist is now, on 17th Avenue. And then, of course, he ended at this last location on Long Street and 17th, where he built the Alpha Hospital, along with Dr. Treppett. Dr. Treppett was the dentist here. They helped build the community of African American dentists as well as doctors. And if you pay notice to the area, actually the two streets on the side of here, 17th and all the way down to 20th, there are these large homes. And as a young girl, I would drive through there, and I would always wonder, because of course in the 70s and 80s in this area, and we were pretty disadvantaged. But I was always wonder who made these big, beautiful homes. They had to have been beautiful at one time. But again, once you start studying history, you understand that the homes were built originally by Caucasians that had lived here. But in the 1910s, 1920s, the community began transitioning to an African American community, better known as the Bronzeville area, known for its jazz and its theaters. So it became a very influenced area, not only for the arts, but for the education of black doctors. I love this type of stuff. Great history. So what that video was saying was that African Americans have had to identify ways to create their own healthcare systems, which for me, I find that to be pretty creative.
Yeah, don't you? Absolutely.
We are a resilient community. And resourceful.
Yes.
For something to always be taken from us. But for some reason, we figure it out.
You know, there's a quote that says, necessity is the mother of invention. And that's what we, out of our necessity, we've had to invent our own because it was taken from us. It was stripped from us. It was stolen from us. And so because there was a need there, the mother of invention, we had to invent these things. We had to create these things for ourselves.
Well, honestly, we've created mostly everything that they do anyway.
Exactly.
And it's not a they or them situation more so than us trying to find our own selves. And sometimes we have to be honest.
We do.
So we're sitting outside of St. Clair Hospital, which is located off of Mount Vernon Avenue on St. Clair. And it actually was one of the first African American hospitals, or I should say, it was in the African American community. It was established by Caucasians, used for the individuals that worked on the railroad systems. But after 1940, considering it was in the African American community, it became a staple in the community. And in 1970s, it became a hotel owned by African Americans. So, and now it is an apartment building.
It's beautiful.
So, I mean, all of this type of history has to be explained so that our children know what's sitting around them.
I think that's the lack of the of what our children face is that they don't know.
They
so
don't know.
They don't have pride in their community and where they came from, because this history is not widely taught. So kudos to you for bringing these things to light. Even just when I read the sign, it gave me goose pimples, because I'm like, this is a part of our collective history. No matter if these were my grandparents or not, we're all related some kind of way, right? No matter if these are my great-great-grandparents or not, they were African Americans.
They were.
Who did this.
They
and
were.
So because our children need to know that our history didn't begin as slavery. Our history began when we were kings and queens. And so they don't have any pride, because they've been taught and they've been told, and it's been ingrained in them that we're slaves, and that's where our lives start.
When you think about the confidence that comes from knowing where you come from.
Definitely.
To see a statue of your great-great-grandpa and you walk by it, you have to get taller.
Definitely.
I mean, I'm just saying.
Definitely.
But everything for us, even when it's talking about this architecture, that a lot of these buildings were built by African Americans.
Absolutely, on their backs.
But a lot of times they're destroying that history.
They are.
So today, Chandrita is pairing in conversation with me regarding history, because she too is in love with understanding things and resources and ways we can improve as African Americans, especially when it pertains to our community. But what is more important today is she's our financial expert. And right now, it's my belief, for those of you that don't know, I have an elderly father, and he currently has Alzheimer's. And we are in the state of understanding what it means to be retired, elderly, and somewhat disadvantaged. Although he's not disadvantaged, but according to the system.
Yeah.
So explain a little bit about what your understanding of the system is right now for African Americans when it comes to healthcare, elderly care, and finances.
What I really understand is that it's the whole "not me" or "this couldn't happen to me" syndrome. Most times, like AIDS and HIV, is that wouldn't happen to me. Especially amongst the elderly who have a Rita or a Chandrita, where we have elderly parents who live in a home with us, but they don't feel the direct impact of that financially, because we're there to support them. So for those individuals who don't have that support, there's a direct impact to them with the rising cost of healthcare. It goes up every year, just as inflation does. And if that right now, Rita, if you were 65 in 2019 and retiring, you would need almost $400,000 in liquid cash to be able to afford your health care for the duration of your life. And here's the other sick thing. They're pumping these medications in us. We'll live to be 150. We could. So we retire at 65, and then we can't even successfully retire. It's a class of people called the working poor. Well, they retire, but they have to go back to work because they can't afford health care. So they have to go to work to have some kind of work-related health care.
Well, how did we arrive here? We understand the history. But psychologically, how did we arrive in a place where African Americans cannot get the advantages? How did we arrive here?
I think a lot of it is due to our ignorance. And I often tell people there's nothing wrong with being ignorant. Ignorant means you simply don't know. Stupidity means you know better and won't do better. So there's nothing wrong with ignorance, but these conversations are not being had. People are doing, but they're not talking. And so there's no sitting down with your mother. There's no sitting down with your father. Historically, right? It was that, daddy go to work or mama go to work, and that's just what it is. And this is our new normal. This is the reality that we're in. So since there's no passing down of knowledge from generation to generation, since people aren't really taking a look at it, I am convinced that most people of color are nosy and not inquisitive. Inquisitive means I'm gonna ask 1,000 questions because I need to know.
Because
Nosy
you're trying to
I'm
change
gonna sit over there,
something.
and wait and see what happens.
Yes.
And try to figure it out in my head.
Yes, that's
when you
such
should
a
be
good point.
inquiring, how does this work? Why do these people? Yes. Why do these people who don't look like me have these advantages? And what can I do to better position myself so that I can take advantage of what they're taking advantage of? We don't do that.
That's a
and it's
great
because
point.
maybe we think we don't deserve it. Maybe we feel like you know, of all this long-term history of racism or whatever, that we're going to be scammed out of something or scammed into something that's not going to be beneficial for us. Or maybe when we get into it, it's not going to play out for us as it played out for the next person. So I don't think there's one way to skin that cat. I think that there's a lot of different things that play psychologically in our heads.
Well, I think one of the points that the video said, and we have to be honest in our setup, we help people.
That's it.
I know a lot of cultures, they don't look to help a sister who's in need because they're looking at their future,
right,
which ultimately takes away from that person's future.
Definitely.
So now we have hiccups of helping, but do we just say, I don't care? How do we process growing as African Americans, helping others, because that's who we are as a community, without it affecting our future?
And we should still do that, but it depends on our mentality with it and our motives as well. So you can't pour from an empty cup. So you have to stay full if you're going to help the next person. And so what you have to create for yourself and for your family is balance. You can't give and not be replenished and not be refilled. That's with knowledge, that's with emotions, that's with everything. So because we are helpers, we need to be helpers of one another, but at the same time, we got to continue to stay full so we can continue to give out.
So how will that income be replaced though? So if I'm making $100,000, and this is very typical of the first year or the first generation college graduate, okay? If no one's graduated in the family, this person graduates, they probably have $30,000 in student loans, because again, there was nothing there to help pay for the education. But their first graduate, and let's say they have their master's, making six figures, doing very well, but they're the only one. Do you remember Soul Food?
Yes.
And it was almost her expectation.
Yes.
She was the attorney.
Yes.
And it was like, shut up and take care of us.
Right.
I mean, how does that affect that person's legacy?
It does if they allow it to. So again, that goes back to balance. She got so frustrated because there was no balance. She didn't establish boundaries up front. It's a lot of us siblings, and then we're married. So mama need help, all of us gonna come to the table. And how they do it in Africa is, you may not be able to give $10,000, but you give from what you have.
The percentage.
So all of us might not be able to give the same amount, but we can all contribute from what we have.
I like that idea because that still makes everybody feel a part of.
That's right.
That doesn't make the one person feel like they're responsible for everything.
Exactly.
Because that's my example. And I guess that's why I'm sort of up. I'm not upset or bitter. But I can feel it.
Sure.
And I'm like, I'm trying to tell my daughter, look, you got to pick up the momentum because now it's her turn.
Sure.
But I don't know how attractive I made it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Definitely.
To take care, keep taking care of people is a little challenging.
But what's amazing is you're having the conversation, and what you can add to that is I want you to be well balanced. So from my father, I'm the baby of 11. But from my mother who lives with me, I'm her only child. So it's me and my husband. There's nobody else to share the responsibility of us taking care of mommy. So what I try to do now is make sure that her health is as good as it can be. She had long-term drug abuse. She has a lot of stuff going on, so I get it. But now I try to make sure I've changed her eating habits. I check into her medications. I make sure that they're not conflicting with one another. She should be taking the proper dosages that she's taking. So as an only child, is Aubrey your only baby?
She is.
So as an only child, helping her create that balance and holding you accountable to keeping yourself healthy now will give her ease and longevity.
So we're having a proactive conversation.
Yes.
An active conversation,
Yes.
and we're making sure we plan for the future.
Definitely.
So all of those things are happening cohesively.
And I love it because here's what we tend to do as a community. We will plan longer for vacation. We will plan longer for retirement. We won't plan anything for our health care and retirement.
So let's talk about that.
Okay.
I have to talk about that.
Okay.
Me and Jocelyn got into this, right? Did you hear me say that
I
name?
said I heard you did.
Was you proud of me?
I'm so proud.
I'm so proud of you. Jocelyn. So, one of the things I think is happening, and it's based on knowledge, is we go to work and they tell us about the 401, the retirement. I think based on even my daddy's situation, there is working, there's retirement, and then there's elderly care. It's like you need 3 different accounts.
Absolutely.
The elderly care don't got
100%.
nothing to do with your retirement.
Not a thing. It's a completely separate entity.
Because it seems like once you get to that place, you've almost exhausted your funds.
You have. And so
And
here's
if you haven't, they're going to exhaust them for you.
Yeah. What happens is when you go in, and most of our people in our community don't do this, they won't go and sit down with the financial advisor. That means that they have to have buku loads of money. If I'm going to an advisor, then I need to have money to invest and all of that. That's a misnomer. When you sit down with the financial advisor, you got $25 in the bank and you have a job where you have a 401k, you go sit down with the financial advisor. They should be talking to you about what your retirement goals are. And if one of your retirement goals is to be able to afford health care in retirement and they don't bring it up, you should either get up and walk out, or you make sure that you bring it up, because that's the main thing. When you retire, your health is going to decline.
Well, we had learned through Jocelynka, and she'll talk about more of this in more detail, because that will be what she's going to talk about.
Sure.
But the reality of having long-term insurance.
Long-term care. Yep, long-term care.
So, but I think we mix it up. We pay for a thing called long-term, like disability at work.
Yeah.
And I think people think, oh, I'm paying into a long-term.
Yeah.
But once you're finished working, it's over.
Curtains.
So you paid, but it's over.
That's the same thing with life insurance. If you don't die at that job and you live past it, that life insurance is gone. That policy is gone. And also what you need to understand is that if you're getting that where they will match your salary, they own that policy. You need to go over your paperwork. Speak with someone in your benefits department. Yes, St. Clair. Speak to someone in your benefits department and make sure that you're asking the tough questions. Make sure that you get an advocate, a financial advisor, somebody that can work with you with your human resources department, so that you understand those benefits, how they operate, when they're cut off, who owns your policies, and what you can be doing in order to make sure that you're ready for retirement, not only by your 401k, that you're also ready for retirement within your health care.
Love all of that.
Yeah.
So again, state those points again so that they know to take note of all of those finances.
So you definitely want to have a healthcare savings account, something that so say for instance your 401k. Most companies are matching. So if you put 3% of your 401k, your employer puts 3%, that's 6% of your paycheck, pre-tax money going into your 401k. Now, if
we know about that. We feel good about 401k.
If your company, I said that to mirror what they should be doing as far as a savings, a healthcare savings or a healthcare investment account as well.
Okay, the healthcare investment.
Yes, so healthcare investment account, you should be modeling that same thing. And it's going to take discipline,
right?
Yes. It's going to take discipline for you to do it, because there may not be somebody to manage it and to manage your funds going over there. And a lot of companies you work for may not offer it. So if you say, I'm disciplined enough to put 6%, 10% of my paycheck into a healthcare investment account that I can't touch until retirement or until it's needed, then you definitely want to do that, because once it's over at your job, it's over. There's nothing past that. So make sure that you're planning for not just retirement through your 401k investment account, but that you're also planning for healthcare retirement. You're getting those accounts set up. You're talking to a financial advisor, and they are talking about your healthcare if in retirement. If not, if they don't bring it up to you, you definitely bring it up to them.
Thank you very much.
You're so welcome. Thank you. Thank you for bringing up the topic. It's so necessary, especially in our community, because we're the least healthy people.
Yes, we are.
We're the least healthy as a people.
With the least resources.
With the least resources. So we have a double whammy.
Yeah, we got some work to do, don't we?
We do, definitely.
Well, thank you. You guys have heard it from the horse's mouth. Our financial guru, expert, Chandrita House-Boykins. We love hearing again. We're not just trying to provide you guys with a problem. We're trying to make sure there is a resource and a solution. So she provided you with some good nuggets to make sure that you guys have at least a way to get started. And it sounds like a financial planner is the first thing
step
on the list. Now, before we go on, can you advise what we should look at? Because honestly, outside of you, I'm scared of financial people. I just think y'all, I'm just being honest, because it just, they talk over your head, and I just feel like you win. How do you find the best financial advisor?
So I would definitely say do your due diligence. Ask somebody that you trust who they would recommend. I have a person right now, Perry Jeffries. He's probably the GOAT as far as I'm concerned in this city, especially for our people. He's definitely a writer for us.
Perry Jeffries?
Perry Jeffries the third.
Perry Jeffries the third is a good resource.
He's a great resource, and there are many more, but I would definitely say do your research, do your due diligence, set up a consultation, because when you talk about financial matters, you got to talk to somebody you can relate to, that feels you, that understands you. And this is what I tell everybody in every situation: become a master asker. Don't go in there blind. Go in there with some questions that you want answered, and if they don't sound right, or you're not 100%, just like if a person gives you a diagnosis and you don't like it, you get a second opinion from another doctor. Go in there, get what you hear, and then if you don't like what it says, go to someone else and get a second opinion. Challenge that information and make sure that it makes sense to you and that you're comfortable with what you're hearing.
Challenge the information, Black people.
Yes.
Come on now. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, baby. Thank you. As usual, my pleasure.
So we're going to continue the conversation to make sure you guys have some additional resources. What we're talking about, for those of you that just joined us, is the history of hospitals and how they influence the African American communities. But in this conversation, again, we're always trying to provide you guys not with facts and just stats, but giving you some good resources so you can walk away really working at what it is that we're talking about. Healthcare, elderly care is huge in America, especially when it pertains to the African American community. I knew it was an issue, but it really doesn't hit home until it affects your home. And it's affecting my home right now. And I'm really challenged with the processes that's been set up for our elderly. And I brought in some guests today that's going to help in the conversation, to not only be a resource, but to be of a knowledge. I met this young lady last week while, again, looking for some new resources for my father. And in the interim of meeting her, I found out her dynamics. One of her passions is making sure that we have a good resource. Did you hear me? A good resource to help African Americans find help for their elderly parents. I am going to introduce to you guys Jocelyn Davidson. Come on, girl.
Yes.
Hey, Jocelyn.
Hello, sweet Rita.
Thank
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for allowing me to say your name over and over again. I think I got it.
Yeah.
I think I got it.
Jocelyn. You got it. Yes, absolutely.
Jocelyn.
Yes, ma'am.
So we're going to watch a clip. I'm going to
Okay.
make sure that they understand what it is that you're about to talk about.
Sounds great.
And then we'll be back in a minute. According to USA Today, blacks are more likely than whites to suffer medical conditions that lead to more severe health problems and higher health care with higher insurance costs as they grow older. Their health problems are exacerbated by financial troubles that include lower savings, home ownership rates, and Social Security incomes than whites. It's a huge issue. Over our working life, we experience pay disparities. We have little wealth in our families and often support others. By the time we reach an age where chronic diseases catch up with us, we are dropping out of the workforce and relying on disabilities or taking early Social Security retirement. That means difficult choices for low-income African American seniors, says Lisa Marsh, president of AARP Foundation. If they pay their mortgage, can they pay for their medicine? That's the question. What you guys think? I mean, again, the history of when we understand something, especially when it pertains to our history, we get a better understanding of what we have to do about it. Jocelyn is an excellent resource, as I mentioned before, because she's an expert when it pertains to finding locations to place the elderly. She's a great resource so that they can be placed in a safe place.
That is so important to me. Not just any place, the right fit, a place that is going to feel like home when they enter, a place that has a good reputation, because I do my homework just to make sure that they've met all the requirements that are necessary for our great state, and that they're going to receive the level of care that they need. But before you even get into all that, you have to know, or you have to ask those important questions. And sometimes hard questions. When I spoke to you, I was like, I'm gonna have to get up all in your business, because I need to know important information, not just for the community, but so I can better help you.
Well, when you think about that, we try to get into the truth on the show.
Right, absolutely.
And some of the problem that I personally had with a generation pertaining, specifically my parents' generation.
Right.
They were so private.
Yeah.
Private almost to a fault. And it's just, how does a person who you know is private begin approaching those concerns with their parents?
Well, you know what? I think it's all about understanding that there is a certain level of privacy, but also having the conversation about, okay, Mom, Dad, I love you and you're aging, and I really want to make sure that as you age well, and that you are best prepared, and I'm best prepared to help you live your best life.
Oh, go on, girl. I ain't old.
You know,
give me something to eat.
I understand,
That's what
but you're
they'll
not
say.
old. But you're not old. You're just getting better with time, just like fine wine. But even then, we still have to prepare. Preparation is key. And I think that in the African American community, I know myself personally, and my own experiences in dealing with my family, we haven't been taught the value of preparing for the end of life. So we've been taught, just like you mentioned earlier, okay, you have to have life insurance. That's very important. You have to prepare as far as retirement, but I'm not even sure how much retirement I need to have. We prepare
we're
for
living
everything.
longer, right?
We're living longer, and so, but we don't talk about what is the end of life going to be like in the event that I live to be 105 years old. So what does that look like, and what does that cost? Because nobody's prepared to live 105 years old.
Well, I have just a little story, and I can't say too much, but my grandfather, which is actually my husband's grandfather, is 101.
Wow.
And he worked for Kodak. And they were inquiring about him still being alive.
Yeah. Like,
because they keep having to pay.
Right. Wait a minute. Is he still alive? Because we are. We're living longer, which means we have to think about it. We have to take into consideration what that looks like, especially when you start thinking about senior housing, which is expensive. It can start as low as $2,000 per month. And I said per month, all the way to $10,000 per month. And if you
Let's
have
talk
problems,
about that.
Okay, so when you're thinking about the $2,000,
because that's what they're thinking.
Yeah.
So even it's like a car.
Right.
So they're really thinking, oh well, Daddy, he make $3,000, he'll be able to get in one.
Yeah, and
Let's
that's
talk
not
about
always
that.
that's not always the case. For instance, in your particular situation, you have a father that unfortunately has Alzheimer's, and because of the level of care that he's going to need, he needs more care. He needs around-the-clock care, and that's expensive. And so you haven't prepared for that. So maybe your dad does have $3,000, but does he have $10,000 per month?
And that would be what he really needs in order to be taken care of in the way that we would assume they should be taken care of.
Now, there are other, let's just say this, there are other memory care communities that provide really great care. I talked about the shiny penny. So there are plenty of them out there, but even $3,000 is not going to get you a good memory care. You're not going to pay $3,000 a month for memory care. More to $5,000 starting, more with memory care up to the $10,000 range. And how many people have prepared for that? Nobody.
Well, and it seems like that is what's happening to the elderly.
It is
happening. Most of them have Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
So if most of them have Alzheimer's and they need more memory care, it almost seems like, I don't know, is something happened that's caused Alzheimer's?
That's the question, right? That's the question.
When we were caught, and I was talking to him the other day about this, when we were little, old people, when they were forgetful, was called senile.
Yeah.
And it was just like, they were old.
Yeah.
They may have I forgot to take my pills.
Yeah.
But to be where we're at now,
I just think that they didn't have a word for it. I was speaking with my dad about my grandfather, Fudge Sr., and he actually had Alzheimer's. But before he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, he was actually sent to a mental institution.
and those was huge.
Right. So
we were talking about that
they're trying to figure out, like,
day.
cognitively, what is going wrong with him. Is there something mentally going wrong with him? Not realizing at the time. And of course, he had to go through and get the second opinion, as mentioned earlier, because it's important to kind of get all those doctors on the same page and not always settle for the first thing that you hear. Right? So get more information, gain more information so that you can understand what's happening with your loved one, or even for someone who's a friend that maybe you're helping with.
I love that because, you know, in the end of the hour, we're all held accountable.
Yeah.
And we have to start as young as possible.
That is so true. And I have learned that, and I'm still learning that, the importance of actually planning, again, not just for life as we're living it, but life for later on and for our children, so it's no longer a burden for them. I often have conversations with families just like you, and the biggest thing is how overwhelming it is, the senior care, this maze of senior options, and whether or not I can get my dad in here and I have to get him assessed, and how much is it going to cost, and what's the location, is it going to be the level of care that's needed. And what I try to assure them is that I'm there for them. I love to listen to what their concerns are. I understand the problem because I have family members myself who've had dementia, they have Alzheimer's, and in my family specifically, I really think, and I think in the African American community, to be honest, oftentimes we don't put our families in communities because we can't afford it. Because again, we haven't prepared for it. We don't understand the costs associated with that. And that's why long-term care insurance is so very important. So when I actually purchased the franchise here in Columbus, Assisted Living Locators, I started asking my husband a lot of questions. I'm like, I started asking my husband questions. I wanted to know, like, are we prepared? Because, you know, you think that you're prepared until something happens to you, and then you no longer feel like you're prepared. You're like, oh my goodness, like, this is so overwhelming. And what my job is as the owner and also senior advisor is to lighten the load, to help you navigate this maze of senior options, to educate you on the things that I have education on, and if I don't. Because I will not pretend that I know every answer to every question, but the great thing that I can say is that I have a network of resources, of people and doctors and nurses and social workers that I can rely on to help provide that information. I know.
I'm over
to
here.
provide that information. No, I get that. I get that, like, with everything in my heart, because I haven't experienced what you have, but I have a sister who's taking care of my mommy who has dementia right now. And I can only imagine what that feels like every day, because you want the best for your loved one. You want to be there for them and support them, but you also have to figure out, how can I manage also having my life, right? And what I always remember
without
is
the guilt of it, right? Guilt.
But this is what we have to remember. If you go back and you're writing a plan, you're getting ready to go, maybe California, wherever you're going, and the stewardess comes up and she tells you, she starts showing you what to do in the event something happens. If we need to put our ear mask on, and they always say, do what? Put yours on first. And why do you think that is? You have to be able, in order to be able to help your dad, your mom, your sister, your brother, you have to first put that mask on yourself so that you're better equipped to help them. And someone said earlier, maybe it was you, who said, if your cup is empty, how can you help someone? So you have to fill your cup first, and it's very important to do that and not feel guilty about it. But it's not easy not feeling guilty, because your parents gave you your life and they helped you along the way, and you want to be able to able to do the same things that they've done to you. So as they age, the roles reverse. So it's almost like you become the parent and they become the child. And so sometimes you have to tell them, and it's tough love, like, this is what we're gonna do and this is why we're going to do it, just like we do with our kids.
And it's just that black and white.
It is. It's not always easy, though.
Caring enough to be stern enough.
Yeah.
And to never stop the conversation.
Never.
Because I know I did. I stopped.
Yeah.
Because he was just that stubborn.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, I ain't gonna get the information.
Right.
But if I had to do it over again to avoid this right now, I would have been at his door every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because this is crazy.
It is.
That I got to figure this out.
You do. You do. It is. It absolutely is crazy. But let me just say, people perish because of lack of knowledge. And honestly, your dad had no idea.
He didn't. And that's what we talk about too.
Even though he's a private person, he had no idea the magnitude or the burden that this may cause you. If he knew, if he understood what you're experiencing right now, he would not want to do that. I know that for certain. So what we have to do is we have to first start with education. I think education is so important. You have to understand what the aging process could be like, what it may be like, and sadly, people are getting early onset, Alzheimer's, and who prepares for that?
Yeah,
right?
I mean, somebody was telling me, a lady who does a nursing home, her youngest patient is 56.
Wow. And that happens, and it's so sad. When I took a class for the CSA, CSA, Certified Senior Advisor, it was a story that was shared of a man, and he was diagnosed, and they went for years not really knowing, right? And then finally he was diagnosed. And so the wife actually went to the neighbors. The story, I'm telling you, it touches me. She went to the neighbors and said, my husband was recently diagnosed with Alzheimer's. If you see him going around, because every day he goes to the mailboxes, it's his routine, he takes all the mail out of the mailboxes. And so I don't know if you've noticed it, when I get home, I go and I put all of the mail back in your mailboxes. Then she went on to say, I need your help. If you see him and he's someplace, she sent a picture as well, but she sent this out to all of her neighbors. I need your help in guiding him home, because she still had to work, because guess what? They hadn't prepared for that next phase. So a neighbor came across the street. It was the neighbor that actually was right directly across the street from them, and introduced herself to the husband and to the wife and said, I want to help you. So the husband came up and, and he asked if, did you want a coffee? And he was like, no, or she said, no, I don't want coffee, but I want to go walking with you. So she walked with them, and he actually started giving the mail, and then she walked with him, and then they put the mail back. So those are things. It does take a village, and your village may look different than what it looked like 20 years ago, when all the family members were coming together and we were financially supportive, and we all were spending time, okay, from this hour to this hour I'll be with grandma, and from this hour to this hour I'll be with grandma.
Well, I had a friend that said that.
Yes!
She said, oh, well, when my grandma went into the hospital, we had a routine.
Yeah.
We were all on shift.
Yeah.
I said, oh, well, it'd be one name on that shift.
Right. Well, see,
I mean, when you don't have 10 people,
yes,
that's what she didn't understand.
Those are the isolated seniors. And I read an article recently. So you talk about the isolated seniors who don't have family members right there, who may
they act like they're there,
or they have one and only child, and then the responsibility is just on that only child, trying to figure that out. That's hard, and that's why, as parents, and as a parent myself, I think about my own children and how I want to make sure that they don't have to experience what I see people experience every day. And it's not a bad thing. And I've said to my sister Sean, I've said, I don't want you to feel guilty. If you feel like, this is too much for you, it's okay if it's too much for you, because mommy wouldn't want you to be just burdened with all of this, right?
It's a catch-22, because regardless, being a responsible thinker, if somebody else does it, you're still concerned.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So it's all of these.
Yeah.
I just don't know.
I don't know either. So listen, but and that's just what mommy took care of her mom, and Sean is taking care of mommy, and that's just the nature of what my family unit looks like, and that's great, and that's wonderful.
Did your grandma have Alzheimer's?
I don't even know what her diagnosis was, but I remember a medical bed, a hospital bed, in the back room, and mommy would go and she would rub her hair and she'd wash her, she'd just take care of her. She'd just take care of her. That's
our
what
community.
They did. Exactly. But things are a little bit different now, because people are working longer hours. It's hard to make ends meet. I think with the African American community, we have to realize that there's a wage gap too, right? So most people don't have long-term care insurance because they can't afford it. They're just trying to live every single day. So then you tell them, oh, you need this, and then it's too late, because now you've waited until dementia has been diagnosed, or Alzheimer's has been diagnosed, or some other illness, and then the insurance, you can't even get it at that point, right? Or you have to go through underwriting depending on the level in which.
But we want to make sure that they are clear on exactly what you do.
Yes.
So that we can use you as a resource.
Absolutely.
In the interim that someone is approaching that stage of life, how is it that they contact you, and why would they contact you?
Okay, so let's go with the why first. I think the why is more important than the how, and I think the why is more important because when you reach out to me, I'm going to treat your family as if your family is my family.
And you have done that.
That's just who I am. And I use the hashtag just like family. And I say that because I am concerned with the well-being of your loved one. And I actually stress about it. I think about it. I pray about it, because that is what is important to me. I want to make sure that not just that they're placed someplace. We can place them anywhere. That's not the best thing for them, right? I want to know what it is that your loved one loves. Like, I know that your dad loves to be outdoors. So if there's a place that's not outdoors, as you said, it's going to drive him crazy.
And he'll drive everybody else
crazy. So I like to dig a lot deeper just to understand the family and what's important to the family and what's important to the senior, because it's really important to understand what's important to the senior. So yes, I do placements. I'm a referral company. I own a franchise here in West Columbus called Assisted Living Locators. You can go to my website.
What's the name of the website?
It's assistedlivinglocators.com/West Columbus. My contact number is 614-347-6140. And you can also go to my Facebook page, which is Assisted Living Locators West Columbus. And I do a lot of different things for families. The biggest thing that I do, of course, people would think the biggest thing is placements, which I think is really, really great to have the placements, and that is how I earn my income. Let's be honest, that's how I do it. But
well, break that down first, because the reason why placement is important is, and I'm just explaining it from my perspective,
absolutely,
is because a lot of they're all businesses.
Yeah.
And you know, there's well-known brands and there are no brands, meaning that they didn't do much marketing.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that that wouldn't be a great facility.
Right.
She identifies those individuals who may not have that much marketing funding.
Yes.
But it's a great place. They have great nurses.
Yes.
They're safe.
Yes. Absolutely.
And I think that's what's unique about your service.
Absolutely.
You wouldn't be able to find them.
I help you navigate all the options. So it's kind of like I am a real estate agent for senior citizens.
Exactly.
Is the way that the best way to
and
summarize
you find
that.
the little nuggets in
I
the
do.
community that no one knows exist.
Yeah.
I love that about you.
I thank you. I just love everything about you.
Oh,
I do.
Thank
I
you.
do. I feel like
think
there's
we're
a connection.
All right, girl.
Yes.
Thank you guys. Put your hands together for Miss Jocelyn Davidson. She is our new expert who's going to talk about elderly care. We're just collecting them, baby.
Yes.
We're collecting these resources. So at this time, we don't have any more clips, but we want to continue the conversation.
Yes.
I got another resource. I'm excited, as usual, to introduce everyone that I have on the show. I have my friend, y'all already know Beverly Robinson. Beverly is my friend, y'all.
Yeah, she's my dear love.
Well, Beverly has been very helpful in our community initiative of talking about the importance of DNA. So many black people don't believe in DNA. And I get it. I understand they sell stuff off, and come on, people. They selling off anyway. I mean,
I agree.
we go to Google, search
Every day.
engine, put applications in all the time.
All the time.
What do you think's happening to that information?
It's being shared. It's being shared.
So, you might as well know where you come from.
I would agree.
Yeah, so Beverly, it's been about a month now, right?
Yes.
Beverly took the DNA test. That Beverly has a story, you guys, and we've talked about it before. We discussed it at the expo, but share with them a little bit for new audiences that don't know. Just a brief caption.
Rita encouraged me probably 2 months ago about finding my family. I don't know who my birth father is, and so I started the journey, and now we're here. It's been a month now, and so I'm connected with Ancestry DNA, and I'm on the journey to find out who my family is for health reasons.
For health reasons and for personal.
Personal.
You did get some results back, right?
Yes.
And we are one step closer. So sometimes with the DNA, it is not always black and white, but there's at least a source to start at. And sometimes you got to do a lot of investigating once you identify that source. But at least you got a source, and it ain't somebody's auntie telling you what they think happened. Isn't that what we do?
Yes.
My auntie told me.
Information that will not help you out when you go to the doctor and you want to know what your health
Right.
conditions are.
So today we're talking specifically about healthcare, and I know you took the DNA. DNA is not only about identifying who you're related with, but it also tells you about the history of your family and the history of your health in your family, right?
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about your experience.
Well, right now I'm in the beginning, so I do know a little bit about what my mother's health history is, and kind of we're digging. So my mother's health history, that we're trying to find out about her parents and her parents, and then also this missing person, which was my father. We're trying to find out where I come from, so I can find out what ailments might try to attach to me and my children as we move forward, so we can be properly prepared for our health.
Yeah, we don't have to wait like our parents did.
No.
We can literally start the journey, go back as far as you can. I don't care if it's the last generation. Make sure you write it down, because what happens is, if we only got 2 generations, the 4th generation could have 4 if you would have wrote down the first 2. So there still needs to be a beginning of somebody, what I like to call identifying historians in your family. People, and we can do it easily, it's just really somebody who cares about it. It's normally one person that God identifies in each family that sort of cares about it where nobody else does. And that person becomes the advocate to know their history. My grandmother was ours.
Okay.
And she was there before all this DNA stuff.
Okay.
And she was the oral historian, not knowing she was an oral historian. But when we got our DNA back, she was cold with it. Almost everything my grandma said was confirmed through DNA. So we can't discount oral history as African Americans, but the confidence comes with the confirmation from the DNA. Because again, it was just a story.
It was.
Just like the Shannon Lanier story with Thomas Jefferson.
Yes.
For 200 years, they were called liars. 200 years. Even though they know who their grandpa and father was. But they were called liars until 1990. So can you imagine that confidence that came in 1990? I mean, again, we don't have to be what we were, because we have new resources that's available that can help us grow. Sometimes we have to lessen some of the consequences that we think is a consequence and keep life moving based on what it is that we know is available. In DNAs, I personally have taken mine. Bev has taken hers.
Yes.
Chandrita's even gotten on board. Chandrita got about 100,000 cousins that she had no idea existed. No idea. She didn't found out she's from Congo. I mean, Chandrita, come back over here. So most of y'all already know Chandrita, but some of you that don't, can't y'all just see the Congo in her? I mean, because she is black, but she black, but she different. Can't you? And didn't you say that you knew some descents from Congo and y'all all had that same?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that so?
Same look.
Isn't that so amazing?
And other people could see it. I didn't start studying it until, so Congo is the second highest percentage. I am Cameroon is first. The current president of Cameroon looks like my grandmother. It's freaky. Wow. She's a lady and she looks just like me. She's light skinned. Her brows are perfect. Cheekbones. She has it.
I love us. I just love us some us. So I want to make sure that they know moving forward what we're doing with the plan as far as what we're going to share next. I know we had talked about that before. We have talked about her family. We have identified or received the research back, but we're also investigating it, right?
Yes.
Now tell us a little snippet of the family conversation that you connected once you received your DNA back.
I've talked to 3 people now, and 3 of them are possibly my cousins, but I have one that kind of emails me every week, and possibly he's related to my mother's side of the family from South Carolina, and he's a retired graphic artist from a newspaper, and he just talks to me by email like at least once a week.
So you know what again is cool about that? if it doesn't find out that you're not cousins, you just made a new connection.
Right.
There is never, ever anything wrong with having a new connection.
Correct.
Especially an African American connection.
Exactly.
Out of town.
Yes. A graphic artist.
A graphic artist, right?
Yes.
Who does that?
Me.
Beverly. We're going to continue Beverly's story every other week or so. We'll touch base. We want to teach you through her eyes what it looks like to begin the DNA process, but what it also means to create your story from the DNA information. It is very important for you guys to register and get your DNA done. It's very important because we're talking about healthcare today, the elderly. If my dad had understood some of the ailments that could have possibly affected him later, he may have had a possibility to secure himself more financially, knowing it was a possibility. He had no idea. He was told to go to work. My dad worked every day, retired, and he was told to have a 401. And he did that. So my dad did what society told him to do, but now we're adding another layer. So we've got to talk to our parents about the new layer because they're in the workforce now, expecting for this workforce to work for them. And unfortunately, it's a possibility that it may not. So you can be the one to save the story. Save your family, open and start the conversation. If you guys don't know Marlon Gary from Chapel of Peace is one of our experts and advocates of life who is beginning classes and teaching people the value of getting to know who your parents are before they are older. Just knowing the basics of who they are. Now keep in mind, I don't do any of this in vain. All of what we try to do is to provide you with a good resource and to be available for the community to grow. That's all we're doing. So again, my name is Rita Fuller-Yates, and I am your lifestyle expert, and I'll see you next time.